And I'm Mystic.
And outside of being advocates for Mammal Juice Rocks, this is Lore Together, where we talk about video game tales and world building and, of course, lore, because it's the thing we like to do together. We lore together.
Yes, and this is episode 7. We'll be covering the classic adventure game, The Dig.
The Dig. Now...
You know nothing about this.
I know absolutely... First of all, guys, sappy confession here. Point-and-click adventures was never really my jam. Never been my jam. I
can see that. They tend
I'm more
to
of
have...
a marmalade person myself,
Oh my
but
God.
yeah.
I tend to agree on some of them.
Yeah, but Myst is kind of a point-and-click adventure.
It's not the same
original...
way. There's no inventory management that is more classic of the genre.
Absolutely not,
So,
yeah.
And even when they did have inventory management in the 5th game, it was one item.
Oh, well then, yeah, that's totally different.
The only other thing you really get is, like, you'll pick up pages to books and stuff, but then they're... You know, it's just pages of a book. You're not having to combine them and
but
stuff.
I think of more of stuff like The Secret of Monkey Island or...
Yes. This is very much that vein.
Or if anybody wants to know about esoteric point-and-click mystery adventures, Pushing Up Roses is actually a YouTube channel that I love personally. She also reviews a lot of Murder, She Wrote and Are You Afraid of the Dark and the Goosebumps shows.
Jeez.
Because it's just like old school nostalgia for me, but for her, she grew up doing those point-and-click adventures. And if you want to know more about point-and-click adventures from somebody who loves the genre, she's a great place to start. Pushing Up Roses on YouTube.
Yeah. I have a few sources. One of them is a great YouTube channel who did a great video on The Dig. We'll cover that at the end.
Okay.
Let me start you with the story. Stop me if you've heard this before, okay? An asteroid is approaching Earth.
This is Armageddon.
So they send up a shuttle...
Okay.
With a bunch of astronauts.
Okay, so this is Deep Impact,
to
not
plant
Armageddon.
Nukes on the asteroid before it crashes into Earth.
Deep Impact. Because the difference between Armageddon and Deep Impact is Armageddon was a celebration of blue-collar chutzpah, whereas Deep Impact was about scientists sacrificing your life, and it was more realistic.
Yeah. Well... The great thing about Armageddon,
and also,
we're gonna
also, I was in school during the time when the theme song from Armageddon was what you slow dance to. Don't want to close my eyes. Don't want to fall asleep. Yeah, that's when a bunch of us knew what Aerosmith was, and we never should have known. We never should have known.
Like, the best thing, like, Deep Impact
yes.
has some scientific inaccuracies for Hollywoodization.
I will say...
Armageddon is
gosh.
so inaccurate.
And I still cried.
It is considered a test almost when you're going into NASA to name as many inaccuracies as you can.
Oh, that's perfect. That's a great analysis.
And the best thing...
None of those people would have gone to space. End of story.
No, that's the thing. So, like, Ben Affleck went to Michael Bay at one point, and he was like, wouldn't it be easier to train astronauts to drill than to train drillers to be astronauts? And Michael Bay told him, shut the up, and I will bleep that.
Thank you, because we are a family-friendly podcast. But yeah, no, Armageddon, it's a fun movie to watch, and I do sometimes get a good cry at the end. But at the same time, Deep Impact, I love Deep Impact because it has the best moment where the scientists realize that they're in the worst-case scenario if they want to save humanity, and... Literally, one of them it's a quiet moment, and one of them looks at each other and is like, well, at least they're going to name high schools after us. And it was just so genuine. I loved it. It was so good.
Okay. So,
anyway, yeah, okay.
In the Dig.
Sorry, we're science nerds on top of video game nerds.
They're not blowing up the asteroid. They are shifting it.
Which makes more sense.
Into Earth orbit.
And that makes more sense and probably requires less energy, I would assume, right?
Don't know about that.
Okay,
I think that
it's.
I think it's an inaccuracy still, but so this is the story premise here. They stop the asteroid. I'm going to give you the very broad strokes of the beginning.
Okay.
They are exploring the asteroid.
Okay.
They find a control surface in the asteroid.
Okay.
So aliens, and then they are whisked away to a planet.
Okay, that's now we're getting into something unique and interesting and unexpected probably if you're playing it for the first time.
The Dig is very much a classic point-and-click adventure game. The story is there. The puzzles are there to pad out the story. The story is a little bit threadbare at times.
Okay.
There's a lot of themes that just kind of repeat to nail home stuff.
But this sounds like this is more about solving the puzzles than it is necessarily about the narrative.
It's a little bit of both. It's probably one of the first kind of story-heavy games. This whole premise of exploring an alien world and all this stuff and all this stuff. Not the asteroid itself, but this thing of the basic story premise was actually pitched by Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
For a TV show he was doing back in the mid-'80s called Amazing Stories. It was kind of like an anthology show.
Okay, yeah.
It was a little bit too expensive to do for a TV show. It was even too expensive to do for a movie at the time. Like, they couldn't figure out how to really get a lot of this across. It would require CGI or a lot of practical effects.
Right.
It would have been quite difficult. The thing is that at this time, and still kind of, Spielberg knows and talks to George Lucas.
Okay.
This is during the time when they're doing a lot of crossovers. You know, Indiana Jones.
Right.
All that stuff is still the thing. Is still going on. And Lucas has what is then Lucasfilm Games,
right,
which is now called LucasArts.
Okay, yes.
So it's easier to do things in a game because it's a cartoon. It's animation.
Right,
it's
exactly. It's kind of, there's certain things where if you're going to have it be fictional setting, it's better to have it be created in a visual medium than trying to make it as realistic as possible. I mean, nowadays that's less of a debate.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this was before Jurassic Park, right?
Yes. In fact, the very first meeting on this game happened on October 17th, 1989.
Wow.
The reason that this date is known so well, it was the day of the LA earthquake in 89.
Oh my gosh.
And this happened at Skywalker Ranch, so outside of LA.
Right, so they were at least feeling some rumblies.
Don't know about that. There's some big names at this meeting, though. You have Spielberg.
Yeah.
You have Lucas.
Okay.
You have Ron Gilbert, who is the writer-designer of Monkey Island, Maniac Mansion, the creator of the Scum engine, which is the script creation utility for Maniac Mansion. It's basically the way they did all the interactive fictions at LucasArts.
Oh, wow, okay.
And you have Noah Falstein, who was a person who also worked at LucasArts and worked on Indiana Jones and Monkey Island. So you have game people there, you have movie people there, and whatever.
Right.
This game has a lot of big names behind it.
Which is so funny because I did. Now, of course, when this was going on, I was like 3. So, of course, I wasn't hearing what was going on with it. So
it has quite a few writers, actually, some of note even. So, obviously, these are the bigger names, but these are still teams. There's more people than just this.
Right.
The original story concept by Spielberg, as I mentioned. Novelist Orson Scott Card did the game's dialogue.
Seriously? That's a big deal.
He's known for Ender's Game and Speaker of the Dead. And last but not least, on the writing team, you have interactive fiction author Brian Moriarty writing out the main writing. Moriarty is best known for Loom, which is his project before this.
Okay, I think I've heard of that one
Beyond
before.
Zork. You probably have heard of the Zork series at some point or seen it.
Maybe.
It's text-based adventure.
I've probably heard of it. I've probably heard of it at least, yeah.
It was his original ideas, Brian Moriarty's ideas, that became most of the game, actually.
Okay.
A lot of stuff for the basic plot, including the asteroid, is his idea. The character concepts are kind of his idea. The style of the story is kind of his idea, too. He actually ended up becoming one of the project leads through its tortured development. We'll get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Art direction was by Bill Tiller. It's a great-looking game. It's aged, but it's very visually stunning still.
Oh, that's good to know, yeah.
Finally, the final lead designer was Sean Clark. And I say final because this game went through hell. 4 different directors, multiple teams, one entire complete respec. It was originally pitched in 89. It didn't come out until November 95.
Wow.
Which is insane. Like, LucasArts at this time, you would go from concept to final release in 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking because back then, because you're dealing with more of a 2D plane, which is also better known medium at that time, it wouldn't have required that much work to implement.
These days you're talking for a AAA game, which, these are not the same level of AAA. Like, budgets have exploded so much, and the medium is taken so much more seriously now. But
the expectations are higher, too.
Right. But, like, for the time,
yeah,
this was still like the AAA. These were the big projects.
Right. But that's a 6-year development.
It's a 6-year development team because of the names involved.
Okay.
Because Spielberg's there's more pressure. People are expecting so much more from this.
Okay.
And it is a very different game than all the other LucasArts games at the time. It's, it's more visceral, it's less humor, it's a more serious storyline.
Wow, okay.
So, and again, it went through numerous respecs and directors and everything, the original concept for the game was set way further in the future. The released game is more contemporary to 1995.
Right. Okay.
The original pitch would have had the crew on a long-range shuttle, a long-range mission, stumble across an alien planet with the original purpose of exploiting the planet's resources. You played as multiple characters on opposing viewpoints and everything.
Okay.
There was a survival aspect, needing water and food. This is very different from most games at the time.
Yeah, that's definitely not something anybody was really thinking about in '89 when it was originally being pitched.
Yeah, and after a lot of production changes, we went through two director. Let's see, it's Falstein, Moriarty. I can't remember the third one, and then finally Sean Clark. Mm-hmm. And during Moriarty's time is when we start getting more of the final storyline going. It's a darker tone.
Yeah.
There's a fourth member of the crew. The final game has 3.
Okay.
He's a Japanese businessman and hobby scientist named Olema Toshi. Oftentimes I hear this referred as Toshi Olema, but Japanese names are surname first.
Right.
So, and I do think he is a Japanese citizen, and so I'm doing that name. He essentially buys his way onto the mission since NASA, they don't have the funds.
This feels very true to life, unfortunately, in a way that makes me very sad.
He dies a very gruesome death in the game. In this original thing, he walks into a room full of acid and dies, and they can't even get his body back.
Yikes.
So, but a lot of the addition of this character, allegedly, I have nothing to back this up, it's just one line I found on one of my sources, stems from American fears of Japanese industrialism at the time.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
This is a time when Japanese-American relations were actually strengthening.
This is actually, it's side point. If you think about things like the cyberpunk era was also coming up around this time. Mm-hmm. For example, Blade Runner. And you see a lot of that like Orientalism. Mm-hmm. And I do mean Orientalism in the problematic tone.
Right.
Which there's the idea of... This is me from having to read stuff when I was in college about the Orient versus the Occident. And thinking of it in terms of otherizing Asian culture, even though it didn't need to be. And there was this serious fear, and especially because I also studied economics, and there was a serious fear in the late 80s, early 90s that Japan was going to take over. And...
Well, this is when Michael Crichton wrote Rising Sun.
Right.
It's a novel that's all about Japanese-American business relations, and it was a bestseller.
Right. But there was also a joke around the time that, like, say, that George H.W. Bush goes into a coma, he wakes up 6 months later, and he goes, "Oh, how's everything?" He's like, "Oh, everything's stable, everything's great, the economy's booming and everything." And he goes, "So how much is a loaf of bread?" Which is a common economics way of seeing how's it. And then there's a pause, and the guy and his economic advisor responds, "Oh, about 6,000 yen." Like, that was the joke, because that was how scared everybody was about Japanese culture. And so a lot of cyberpunk, unfortunately, is born in this Orientalism, which is why you have referrals to katanas and a referral to Japanese business identities and things like that.
Well, that started shifting eventually when China started becoming the superpower. So.
Right. It started shifting, and I think we see Japan as more of an ally now, but that still is something that kind of colors the roots of a lot of sci-fi. So you just have to keep that in mind when you're going around that era. There was a lot of great stuff written back then, but with the cyberpunk genre, you just have to be careful with the Orientalism that kind of seeps through and has some problematic tendencies.
Yeah. So. And again, this is a game that is a product of its time. Speaking of which, you mentioned Jurassic Park before. So this game...
I'm sorry.
So we mentioned Olema Toshi dying in a acid-covered room.
Oof.
This very gruesome thing. And the game was very viscerally gruesome at the time. It was very much realistic in its tone and everything. And this was something Spielberg was pushing for because, the seriousness of the story and everything he wanted to tell. And then Jurassic Park happened. And people ignored the PG-13 rating and took their kids, and there was this big backlash about, Spielberg and everything.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah. So...
I still watched it as a kid.
I don't know. Stop being ignorant about ratings.
I'm just going to say this. I watched it as a kid, and I think because it had dinosaurs, I knew it wasn't real. Because I don't remember being traumatized by seeing Jeff Goldblum. If anything, he's now a fixture of our society. But it's nearly not as bad as a Cronenberg film. If you
No.
want to talk about what Jeff Goldblum.
But Spielberg was a family director.
It was still.
Yeah.
I'd still consider that. I
You
would
know,
still show that to
E.T.,
some kids. Yeah.
You know, you have E.T., you have
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones. Well, Indiana Jones is a little gory at times, but you have it was more fantastically gory.
Yeah.
So you have
Right,
you
and
had
the bad
E.T.,
guys
you
are the
had
ones that are
Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
And so people were like, oh, this is gonna be family friendly, and then the T-Rex is eating people.
Okay.
So
that one guy getting eaten while he's hiding in the toilet. That was funny.
Doesn't
we
happen
made
in the
fun
book.
of that. No, I know. You guys don't know, but Mystic's a Crichton fan of some sort.
I've read some of the books.
He
I like
read some of the books. And Jurassic Park is one that he'll fall asleep to if he's having a hard time going to sleep. And so I was like, oh, Jurassic Park's great. And I figured there was a good part early in our relationship where you said, oh, this doesn't happen in the book. This actually happens in the book. And this, that, and the other. Which I find that stuff interesting.
The movie's
so,
great. The movie is an amazing movie.
The movie is perfect. And it actually has undertones of feminism that I was like, what? I was surprised they got away with.
Also, for something that is surprisingly heavy on the CG, it holds up because they mix their CG with practical stuff very well.
It still stands up to. I want to watch it now.
So this backlash prompted Spielberg to want to kind of tone down the violence.
I think it's just because his brand is now
Yeah.
a family
and this
brand.
kind of happened under the direction of Sean Clark, the last one, so it results in the removal of this Japanese businessman because he wasn't contributing a heck of a lot to the story. Mm-hmm. It also loses a lot of the darker edge. It also lost a lot of the science jargon and the denser scientific and philosophical concepts. It made it a little bit more easier to digest for the average person.
So, unlike a Michael Crichton book, because a Michael Crichton book, if you don't know, has diagrams and graphs and statistical analysis.
This is still a time when games are primarily still seen as kids.
Right.
This is...
It's still sold in Toys R Us primarily. It's not...
Yeah, I mean, some of the lore I'm pulling for this, just to explain a little bit, because I want to go down that a little bit, is from the novelization of the game by Alan Dean Foster.
Okay.
And this is a tough time for game novels.
Okay.
Publishers Weekly lamented that this story's monotonously linear plotline.
Wait, but isn't that every
It's a
book?
book.
That's what books do, primarily. Unless you're reading something crazy like House of Leaves, which don't spoil it for me. I need to read House of Leaves.
And it also complained that it used stock characters. Again, it's a book based off of a game. This is the time when stories are just starting to crawl out of games.
Okay.
Myst is just 2 years before this.
That's right. That makes sense.
2 years before this came out, I should say.
Yeah, and that was revolutionary.
Yeah, it was we discussed that in episodes 1 and 2. That it was kind of the first adult game that people actually that took off.
Right.
There were other games that were more mature before it, but Myst was kind of the first one that kind of really grabbed the people.
Right.
So the characters are admittedly a little cliche, but again, this is still early days.
Right.
And when we talk about the main characters, we're also going to delve into the voice talent here because this is early days, they actually switched near the end of development from their original voice actors to professional voice actors. More professional voice actors, I should say. And they also, reduced all the dialogue, the sciencey dialogue and stuff. In the original script for the game, though, to tell you how much they changed the dialogue here, the main character that you play as, you only play as one,
right,
refers to a plant respiring. You will investigate a plant, he'll say it's respiring, this plant is respiring, or whatever.
Okay.
In the final game, he just wonders if it's like poison ivy and he shouldn't touch it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but let's talk about the characters.
I like talking about characters. It's one of my favorite things to talk about.
The main character, player character, Boston Lowe.
I hate that name.
I don't like the name either. Boston's a weird name. Lowe's okay for a last name.
Yeah.
But Boston's a weird name to me.
Why would you name it's Boston? It's like Indiana Jones. Yeah.
Retired NASA commander, flew numerous shuttle missions.
Yeah.
Brought back in by NASA to command the mission. He's not enthused by it. In the novel, he's literally just by the water at the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin County, and NASA rep walks up to him and says, "You want to come on this mission?" And it's a back and forth and everything. He laments, but he does join up.
Okay.
He loves his soda, hates the press, knows it. He knows his job isn't to be the brightest in the group.
Okay.
His job is to listen to the brightest and also get everyone home safely.
I think that's fair.
He's the typical NASA exploration hero, the common man that
just wanted to fly a rocket into space.
That seems to always be the central character so very often.
Right. That makes sense.
One of the people I used for my source on this lamented that why couldn't we follow the scientist?
Right. Well, this is kind of like, I mean, I'm sorry, but the parallels to a Crichton story, because this just reminds me of the Andromeda Strain, where they have all...
You follow the doctor who's not the specialist. He's just a physician.
He's just a physician. He's supposed to be the everyman character.
He's just a surgeon, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I don't have any specialties. They just invited me here to balance out the rest of your smart so that, you have somebody who doesn't have an ego. That's part of the project.
So Boston Lowe is played by Robert Patrick.
Robert... Wait, how do we know this man?
He's been in Stargate Atlantis. He's been in The X-Files, The Unit, True Blood. His most prolific voice credit I could find was as Race Bannon in The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. But you probably know him best as the T-1000 in Terminator 2.
Oh, man! That's how I know him. Okay.
Very much known for his villainous roles, his darker roles and stuff. But he plays the gamut.
He's got the sharp features on the face that if you're going to get somebody of basically Western European descent playing an enemy, he's just got the right proportions in his face to do that.
Next up on the list of characters, we're going to go through the main characters only. There's other characters on the shuttle and stuff. They're there for literally the first scene, and that's it.
Okay, that's fair.
Next up on the main character list, we have Ludger Brink.
Ludger Brink. So is he Russian?
German,
okay.
German representative for the European Economic Community Space Authority. Expert on meteorites and asteroids, has been aboard Mir 2 for months, completing 4 spacewalks, fluent in Russian. His expertise also includes extraterrestrial seismology, specifically Ionian volcanism. And to top all of that off, he's also an archaeologist.
Okay, so this man loves his rocks. Specifically his floating rocks. That's more his thing.
He is stoic, a little cold, almost stereotypically so, but is passionate about his academic disciplines.
That's like every time I read a sci-fi that has a German guy, he's the stoic.
Yeah.
Nobody has the party German on their freaking... Where are the party Germans in science? I want my party Germans. We are out there being... I don't even know how much German I am. I'm German enough and I like to party. That's all I'll say.
Ludger Brink is voiced by Steve Bloom.
Steve Bloom, I know that name too, right?
You know that name. He has an absolutely huge list of over 700 voice acting credits. He is one of the most prolific video game voice actors. He's played Wolverine. He played Grunt in Mass Effect. Ogren in Dragon Age.
Yes!
The longest-running voice of Tom from Toonami. He played Ritlock in Guild Wars 2, Zeb Aurelius in Star Wars, but he is probably best known for his role as Spike Spiegel in Cowboy Bebop.
Yes! I love Steve Bloom! I forgot. See, I'm really bad with names, but if you tell me they voice so-and-so, I just get super excited. It makes me so happy.
I definitely tried to work in stuff that you would know when I come to tell you.
Yes! Everybody should watch Cowboy Bebop. It's the best anime ever. Bye.
Following Ludger Brink, we have Maggie Robbins.
Okay.
She's kind of a tough and stubborn field reporter and a multilinguist prodigy.
Okay.
She's a whiz with languages.
How many does she know?
Don't remember that from my research.
I would assume around at least 10. Because usually that's when you get to...
I don't know.
If you're a linguist
spoiler,
prodigy,
she's the one who kind of tries to decode the alien language.
Yeah.
She made her name in field reporting on the Iranian underground and the Chinese dissident movement.
Whoa.
Nerves of steel from her embedded reporting, and is a very quick study.
Okay.
She is played by Mary Weiss, who has a smaller list of...
I think it's Mary Weiss, but...
Weiss?
Yeah, I think it's Weiss.
Okay, Mary Weiss. Who has a smaller list of voice and on-screen roles to her name: Guild Wars, CSI, Mad Men.
I know.
Hundreds of TV commercials for the likes of McDonald's, Chrysler, Yoplait. She does a lot of voiceover work and Yoplait. And you and I have both heard her in the original Mass Effect as Juliana Bainham, mother of Elizabeth Bainham, both of who can be found in the exogenic colony world of Pharos.
Okay. All right. So that's how we know. I feel like I also know her through the other stuff too, because I watched. I
remember her from CSI. I've heard her character in the original Guild Wars.
I watched up to season 5 of Mad Men before I was tired of
You have literally heard her in probably hundreds of commercials, like on her demo roll on her website. The first one is McDonald's roasted coffee.
Okay, so we've definitely heard her.
You've definitely heard her.
We have a friend whose father is also a prolific voice actor, and then when he played one of the commercials, you're like, he's that guy? It's so funny. I'm not going to reveal it for sake of privacy, but it's always funny when you realize a voice actor is just everywhere.
Yeah. Lastly, we have the creator. an alien we'll discuss more into detail when we get to him.
Mm-hmm.
He is voiced by James Garrett, former member of the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Nice.
He's voiced all the Harry Potter trailers and commercials. He recently has been the voice of Alfred Pennyworth. He was the voice of Crom for 2 episodes of the Conan TV series, which I didn't know there was a Conan TV series.
Right, yeah.
And his most well-known voice role is as Roku, or Avatar Roku, in the animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Ah, yes. That's a series I have to go through, because I've just heard so many good things, and there's so many things I should be watching, and instead I'm watching, like, Tiger King on Netflix, because I'm trash like that, so... P.S. It is entertaining. If you want a roller coaster ride of drama, Tiger King is fun. But that's all I'm going to say, because this is not what we talk about in this podcast.
So let's
join the Patreon if you want to hear us talk about stupid stuff like that.
So let's break down the story. And this is going to be the rest of the podcast, is breaking down the story and going through the story.
Okay. The lore of it all.
Yes. A tracking station in Borneo picks up an asteroid on a collision course with Earth. 99% chance of hitting Earth.
Yikes. That's a big deal.
President Fraser pushes the U.S. government and NASA into action in cooperation with the Russians and the European space agencies. They start a mission to knock the asteroid named Attila into Earth orbit.
Attila the Hun.
Exactly.
I don't know if we would ever like somebody with the last name Fraser, but maybe that's just me being colored because of the fact that I used to like the show Frasier every once in a while.
Never seen it.
It's a sitcom, okay? That's all I can say for it. It was a
Not
sitcom.
Not my style of show.
It was a smarter sitcom than most other... I mean, it was smarter than Seinfeld, I'll say that.
Seinfeld was... Yeah, I'm not going to say anything.
Curb Your Enthusiasm is what Seinfeld should have been. That's all I'm going to say.
Landing crew comprises of Commander Boston Lowe, Dr. Ludger Brink, and Maggie Robbins.
Makes
Ken
sense.
Borden and Cora Miles stay on the shuttle. As they approach, Lowe and Brink and Robbins suit up and plant the explosives on Attila. Setting them off, the asteroid is now in a stable enough orbit that they can begin to explore.
Okay.
They find their way into the asteroid and find that the asteroid is hollow.
So that's suspicious.
Like geometrically hollow, not like just a big cavern, like smooth sides. Like...
Ooh, that's... Yeah. So it's obviously something that is made by sentient life at that point. Yeah.
I am definitely... and the way they get inside is also by pushing, like, obviously artificial metal panels.
Right.
Like, so there's already... They're like, okay... In fact, when they find out there's any proof of artificial life... Not artificial life. When they find alien life... Literally, Commander Lowe messages back to the shuttle saying, tell Houston that Attila is a real Hun. And the shuttle's like, oh, this is some sort of secret code, isn't it?
Oh my god. And
it is just kind of like, now all communications are locked down. Now the reporter's kind of annoyed by it, but whatever. So they get inside, it's hollow. They activate a mechanism. I'm glossing over a lot of puzzles here. Because puzzles are not story.
No, puzzles are not story. But if you want an actual walkthrough, as we said before, this is not the podcast for you. This is us talking about basically the writing of building this world.
Yeah. So the asteroid is revealed when they activate this mechanism to be a giant crystalline spaceship that whisks them away from Earth.
Whee!
And they eventually find themselves on a deserted and barren world that looks straight out of a pulp era sci-fi novel cover.
Which makes me...
We're talking a lot of purples, a lot of oranges...
You know, with the bulbous kind of architecture.
No architecture. It's deserted.
It's deserted.
It's, yeah.
But I know what you're talking about. The that landscape where it's supposed to be evocative of, like, a weird mix of sunrise and sunset with the color tones.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
The world is as if Atris wrote it. It is an endless ocean.
It is if Atris wrote it.
With 5 spires of rock sticking up from the water and a central island that is little more than a bowl-like crater. Very much like Myst.
Yes, this is very much like Myst. It also reminds me of a serving dish, to which then I think of To Serve Man, the Twilight Zone episode.
If you want information on Atris and the Endless Oceans, we talked about from the first Myst game, which is in episodes 1 and 2. We'll get back to that universe sooner or later. Probably more sooner than later. There's an atmosphere here, and gravity. In fact, they're kind of thrown off because they've been in weightlessness for a couple hours now.
Okay. And
with limited air in their suits, they kind of take off all their suits and helmets and leaving them all in the center of the crater where their spaceship just dissolves around them.
Well,
like technologically dissolves, not like sinisterly dissolves. Like it just disappears and leaves them there.
Well, that's still really scary. And then they take off their suits, too?
Well, they have no option. It's like, well, our air's going to run out anyway. So we either die in the suit or we see... it's breathable atmosphere.
Okay.
The place is so desolate that Brink names it Cocytus from Dante's Inferno.
Yikes.
Yeah. In fact, I don't think there's ever a name given to it in the game. That comes from the book Cocytus. They do reference it in the credits. One of the aliens is called the Cocytan Leader.
Okay,
But that's it. Like, that's the only references in the credits.
Wow.
So the name comes from the book, really. Before they can go exploring, which you playing as Lo, because you can control Lo moving on the screen.
Yeah.
There's some friction between Brink and Lo. Brink feeling that his training as an archaeologist is more important than Lo's military training at this point.
No, that's not how that works, dude.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
and Robin keeps the peace on this one, agreeing with Lo that survival is more important at the moment, and Brink agreeing for now. It's clear that Lo is keen on survival and just getting home safe at this point, because they don't know where they are. Brink, and to a little bit of a lesser extent, Robin's. She's not as academic as Brink.
Right. She's a journalist.
She's the balance between the two of them, I feel. You know, Brink is intrigued by the mysteries and the history, and she's intrigued by it a little bit too, because language and stuff.
But if she's a journalist, she wants to survive to be able to tell the story, and just being here is enough of a story as it is, you know?
Yeah, she's a balance between Brink's academic altruism and Lo's more mission-focused pragmatism.
Right.
So, as they explore this crater, there are crashed ships here, alien ships, definitely alien ships. During the exploration, the three of them see a strange being of energy. It kind of flies around and then disappears, leaving a relic behind. We'll call the beings ghosts, and the relic is actually just a clue to a puzzle. It's basically like a password to a lock or whatever.
Right.
So we'll brush past all those. The ghosts kind of repeat and keep showing up to kind of lead people along. They find other relics and clues, finding traces of dead creatures, some living rat-like things, and in some of these locations, Lo pulls out a shovel and starts digging in stuff, much to Brink's growing annoyance, which I kind of get that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a survival technique at all at this place.
Yeah, literally there's a mound with noticeably like stuff stuck into the mound, and Lo's just like, well, we're going to dig this mound up.
Lo, come on. Seriously, that's not a good thing.
And all they find is a bunch of bones.
Right.
Of a creature, so like not even like, yeah.
You can't even be sure what it is.
Yeah. And again, they're finding items at each of these places. They find like a jawbone. They find a weird orb that acts as a tracking device. It gets weird, but all these are just puzzle-related things. They don't really have any impact on the story.
Okay.
So it's all alien tech. Like the tracking device is an alien tech, so that leads to a tiny bit of like, oh, these aliens are technological.
Right.
And, you know, the thing that it's tracking is, you know, another alien piece of tech. So it's story related in that way, but it doesn't actually matter in the plot.
Exactly.
Finally, they go back to the center. They see another ghost, and it kind of flies around and then goes into the ground. And there's a little tiny crack in the ground there.
Okay.
And so Lo starts digging. He notices that the soil is kind of loose, kind of less dense, more like it's just drifted into a hole or something.
Right.
Now it's Brink's turn to take over, being the archaeologist, knowing how to dig in loose earth and stuff, and proceeds as he's digging. The ground collapses under him, and he falls into a underground room that they didn't know was there.
Right.
So Lo and Robbins climb down this collapsed dirt and get to Brink, but Brink's dead.
Damn it, Brink. It's always the more arrogant one that dies first. Just keep this in mind, kids, in the stories.
So, again, they do what any adventuring party would do now. They split up.
I'm so mad. I'm just so... Wait, the best movie angle on this was, believe it or not, the first Alien versus Predator. In the first Alien versus Predator, one of the scientists, a woman who's like in a red tracksuit most of the movie...
I've seen that one, actually.
I remember, because I watched it with my mom, because my mom and I do like a good pulpy sci-fi adventure film. And, I mean, we loved Pitch Black and stuff like that. So when I was younger, we would watch those movies in theaters. And so Alien vs. Predator, we watch it, and she, early on, says, let's not split up. And then, after a point, everybody else is dead except her, and she finds a predator. And she says, no, you can't leave me. She insists. She tells this predator, you can't leave me behind. I'm coming with you. And she's
kind of badass, isn't she?
She does a lot of really... She does kick a lot of butt. Because part of it is her stubbornness, and her need to survive is just so much stronger than everybody else's. And at the end of the movie, my mother turned to me and she goes, did you see she stuck to her plan? And I was like, what? She goes, she said never split up. As soon as she had somebody she thought she could stick to, she did not leave his side. And that's why she's the one that's alive. So that's why I hate this rule, because even in movies, that's the one person who doesn't die if they don't split up. That's my thing about splitting up, is that the one time it works out is when people don't do it. Right. And it just irritates the crap out of me. Also, watch Alien vs. Predator, the first one.
Lo is almost adamant that they not split up.
Right, it's survival. It makes sense.
But Robbins is like, well, we both know the same amount about surviving here. Nothing. And sticking together didn't save Brink. Look, I know why they're doing this. They're doing this because you're playing only one character. Having another character all around. I wish they did keep a character around, because it feels a little weird to have Lo, the non-scientist, talking about everything to himself.
And I on top of that, well, you still have to be really smart to be an astronaut. Right. Even if you're not, quote-unquote, a scientist, which most of them are by design.
Right, but it just makes you wish that there was somebody he could talk to. Well,
and also, there's sometimes where you can have fun with a puzzle where you use the other character as part of the solution to the puzzle.
Yeah.
I would have suggested doing had I been part of this team, but...
They have, communicators. They have little palm...
Communicators, kind of like in Star Trek, where it's like...
Think more PDA. Think more Palm Pilot looking thing.
Okay, can they text each other, or do they call each other?
They call. It's like voice chat.
Okay.
Like I said, contemporary in 95, but still in the future.
Right.
Through some puzzles, and beginning to understand the world, Lo gets the power on, discovers a tram-type system.
Right.
Lo finds these strange glowing crystals. He also finds a museum of sorts that has, pictographic descriptions of things, and which seems to indicate that these crystals he found have the ability to bring back the dead.
That's a little spooky.
Robbins, meanwhile, has found the library and is insistent on staying there as she can start to work on the language.
I think that's a smart idea for her, as much as I still don't believe that you should split up the party.
Well, if you're going to split up, at least stay in one spot.
Right. One of you should stay in one spot, and the other one should go explore.
So Lo does something kind of strange now. He takes the crystal back to Brink's body and breaks it open over Brink.
So he's just guessing now?
Bathing him in this glowing green goo or energy, which brings him back to life. And Brink feels great.
That's I wouldn't trust that for a second.
I wouldn't either. He slowly, through the course of the story, becomes more and more obsessed with these crystals.
Oh, your first hit's always the free one, kids. Your first hit's always the free one.
Robbins is also obsessed with her work and doesn't even consider Brink being alive again worth the walk back to join the two of them.
Okay, so now this is hypnotism mumbo jumbo thing.
But she's so close to understanding the language. She's always just on the cusp of understanding the language.
Yeah.
I can understand that a little bit. Different types of obsession, but hers is more productive.
Right.
Eventually, the world becomes more interesting as devices are repaired, the spires are explored. Each of the spires seems to have a different basic function to it.
Okay.
And there's a structure floating above the center of the crater, suspended in the middle of bridges of light.
Okay.
Which you can just walk on light. This is, for all intents and purposes, a gateway to another dimension, though Lo doesn't know that yet.
Oh, okay.
We'll just get back to it later. Eventually, Lo, through the course of all this exploration and puzzles and stuff, and there's some weird puzzles, you have to put a dead creature's skeleton back together, break a crystal over it.
I'm already, sneering my face, guys.
Put an explosive on it, so another creature eats it, blows up, and then you can swim underwater and get into a cave where there's a little...
That is so just unnecessary. This is why I don't like a lot of these point-and-click mystery games.
The puzzles serve no purpose to this story.
They're so convoluted, and you should just... Some of the worst solutions are things that just, if you're using normal, everyday logic, you'll never get it. And even then, I find that when it comes to the puzzle stuff, I don't think on the same wavelength as everybody else. So I think of a solution that the game doesn't give me, which is always the most frustrating part. Because for me, I'm much more the creative type, which is I like playing stuff that's a bit more open-ended, like The Sims, where I can be more creative.
Right.
Or have a story that makes sense to explore, like an RPG. Whereas when you do point-and-click adventures, you have to be dedicated to figuring out that specific person's logic. It's kind of like when I used to be more of a Mac user to Mystic's chagrin. There's a certain type of logic that Apple uses that once you understand it, it's a kind of the Apple logic flow. It's not necessarily the best logic, but it's Apple logic. If you're not dedicated to learning that system, don't buy an Apple product.
Right.
End of story.
Well, this game does have, as you're saying, all the games in this genre seem to have. Myst is a little bit better.
I would say so, from what we did when we were doing our playthroughs, our live streams.
Sometimes they get a little obtuse.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's obtuse on purpose.
Right.
Riven, I still think, is the best game when it comes to making a world. Like, the puzzles there are just you understanding the world. It's not just there to be a puzzle.
That's what I prefer.
Right.
That's something that makes more story sense.
These have what some call moon logic puzzles.
Yeah, I hate that stuff.
And it's not as bad as some other games.
No, this doesn't sound like it's the worst because it was rooted in real science.
Well, not always. The worst ones, in my opinion, in this game are there's this alien crane device you need to program to go down into this dangerous area and grab something. There's absolutely no feedback. It's just trial and error.
Ugh, I hate that. And then you might be stuck there for 3 hours.
Here's a weird interface and dots that light up. And then you have to punch in the interface and figure out on your own how far down it is, how far over it is.
I prefer something that has genuine pattern recognition or clues around the area or things like that,
right.
Which was more in the Myst vein of things.
Right. The other frustrating thing is this stupid one. I remember playing in the game, only last year actually. You have to trap a creature which has stolen a relic that you need. So you need to trap this little rat-like creature.
Okay.
So you rig up a deadfall trap. And you need to kind of herd it sheepdog style into this trap.
No.
So it is a movement and timing based puzzle in a point and click adventure game.
No, I refuse. I absolutely refuse. And this is why I usually don't play these games. We are going to do a live stream next week, and I will have to be forced to play this.
I'll have a walkthrough.
And
most of these are easy to do a walkthrough for. It's just here's, that crane one is at the beginning of the game. It's just type this, done.
This kind of reminds... Well, I'm sorry.
The movement-based one, the trap one.
Yeah.
I knew what I had to do. I watched a video on it because I forgot how to do it. Still, it took me 45 minutes to do the stupid thing.
Okay. So, if you ever watch... There's a Donkey Kong platforming game. I forget which one it's called. It's the one that, if you guys... know internet famous people, H-Bomber Guy, essentially... Donkey Kong 64, which is literally just, it's a trash heap of collect everything. Yeah. And the way it's set up is basically, it's forcing you to play forever because you have to collect every single item with 5 different playable platforming characters.
Yep.
And H-Bomber Guy, he did a live stream of him suffering through this over a weekend, including naps, for raising money for Mermaids UK, and the worst part was this thing called Beaver Bother, and you're supposed to knock these beavers into a hole in the center, if I remember how it was, and it was very much the same idea where you had a time limit and you had to know how to manipulate your character so you could manipulate the beavers to go into the chute or whatever to get it right.
This is worse.
Yeah, no, this sounds worse because you also have to set up the trap first.
You have to set up the trap, you have to stand in a specific spot, and this little creature will just run out, and you have to get the exact right, second, and the exact right movement, otherwise it runs away, and you have to do the whole movement thing again.
No, this is worse. It's not by much. It's an extra step.
Well, that's actually made to be designed as a 3D game with 3D movement.
Yeah.
This is a point-and-click game where things are slower.
That's even worse. You don't have a joystick. You're just pointing and clicking and trying to move and time it right. Ah, man, I'd hack the game at that point.
Most of the puzzles do make some story sense. You're trying to understand alien technology,
right.
That type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or you just don't have the instruction manual. Fine, brute force it. I think a lot of story and a lot of puzzles in this game are there to pad out the game.
Oh, and I hate when you can tell that. That's really frustrating.
There's literally an object when you're running around the crater picking up stuff. You go to those bones, you pick up a jawbone.
Yeah.
The only purpose I can think of for this jawbone in the whole game, from when I played it, I can't remember anything else. I may be wrong, but the only thing it's there for is to cut off Brink's hand at one point when it gets stuck.
A jawbone?
Yeah.
Let me guess. The goo energy thing heals him again.
No, actually, he doesn't heal his hand back.
Okay, I'm thankful
He does
for that.
jam it into. He does this weird thing where he jams the stump into a green thing. I think it to stop it from bleeding, but it doesn't regrow or anything.
That's fine with me. I would have that. I'm glad that there are consequences for actions, because once you have the Revivify formula, everything is messy.
This is a holdover from the more gory scenes that I mentioned before, and it's not an important piece of the plot. It is there to literally reunite the party for a moment before Brink again goes off to do his own thing.
Thanks, Brink. You're such a team player.
And
I'm so glad I brought you on this life risk mission.
It's really there to just keep seeing this obsession of Brink's that we've already been shown is getting worse.
And it's his obsession with the green goo.
With the crystals.
Yeah.
It's just there to kind of seed this whole thing between Brink and Lo, that one is obsessed with the crystals and the other one is Lo is using Brink sometimes and, kind of BSing him to get him to do things, but he's obsessed with the crystals. Like, he has no other option but to BS him. That's a thing. So eventually, through all this running around, Lo finds a dead alien and uses a life crystal to revive it, but can't understand its language.
Oh my gosh.
At all. And then it just dies again a few moments later. These crystals don't work forever.
Right. That's good.
Lo calls Robbins, but before they can talk about the alien and the language, Robbins is nabbed by a big bug-like creature from the library. This is one of those padding out the story type things.
Nabbed by a bug creature? Like, did we just not notice a spider web and suddenly she was snatched up? This is very convoluted. I don't mean to be such a critic.
It's padding.
But,
It's literally padding because they want to add more to the story. There's this. We'll get to the creature again in a moment. So back to the story. Once you rescue Robbins, because you get Brink to help rescue Robbins, she can translate the alien's language. You go and talk to the alien again, and the game does this well enough. She talks to the alien, not Lo.
Okay.
So she's like, I'll translate. So she's asking questions, and then presumably she's telling Lo what the alien is saying.
Right.
He is the creator. He created the life crystals. He created the portal. His people all left this reality and went to what they call Space-Time 6.
Really?
Our reality is Space-Time 4.
So they're a higher being of existence, essentially?
No, they left space. They were in Space-Time 4 and they went through the portal. They're just in Space-Time 6. Whether it's a higher plane, time is infinite there. Like, they live forever.
Okay.
That was their goal, apparently.
Okay.
They can't get back, though.
Oh.
And living forever is not worth it.
I mean, if anybody hasn't seen that one Good Voyager episode, that's one that's worth watching. I've even been to Scarecrow. That was the part that really freaked me out.
Death Wish. That's a good one.
Yes, that is a good one. Yeah.
He considers all these inventions, the creator, the crystals, and the portal, to be just the biggest mistakes. The life crystals do not revive the spirit. They revive only the meat.
Oh.
It is just the cells and the meat, so it's just... Brink is not Brink. It is just Brink's body and memories forever now obsessed with these crystals. Like, it is still Brink's mind, but all he knows is an obsession with these crystals now.
Right, so what...
Which is what happened to his race, too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the Eye has trapped his whole race in Space-Time 6 with no way back, forever lost themselves now. Without them, there is no way of sending Lo and the others back to Earth either, because this guy can't build the ship by himself. He dies in minutes. Like, he has been dead for so long that the crystals revive him, and then he dies a few minutes later again.
Oh my gosh.
And as for why everything is so locked down and hidden, and all these puzzles and all this other stuff, it's to ensure only the most intelligent and logical, and therefore the most dangerous, could find the creator and be given the warning.
Okay, yeah.
As for the creatures encountered on Cocytus, and that you see, there's a couple other creatures in the big bug thing that you run across.
Yeah.
They are, quote, former pets and companions that have followed their own evolution. It's been eons.
There's a British sci-fi series where this guy, he's such a slob, he makes beer milkshakes, which is just awful.
Ew. And
he ends up being cryogenically frozen for eons, and when he wakes up, there were some pet cats on the ship, and all the people died, but the pet cats ended up evolving, became their own sentient race, and then they had a war, and they killed everybody off except for the one sentient cat person who's left. I forget what his name is. This is what this sounds like.
But yeah, so the funny thing is, so the bug thing, this is why I think it's padding. There's literally one line, quote, "That one did not evolve," end quote.
Really?
So like I said, it is puzzle there to pad out the game.
And yeah, now I'm frustrated. Like, really? I don't mean to be... I feel like I'm totally...
Again, this is, product of its time. This is early, serious story gaming.
I feel like I'm poo-pooing it a lot more than I should because the reason you wanted to talk about Dig was that it's apparently very influential, which...
It's not so much influential. It is probably one of the better selling of all the point-and-click LucasArts games.
Okay.
Surprisingly. More, it just has a lot of story to its development as well.
Okay.
And I think it is a very good game. It is one of the first serious sci-fi games.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And it does do a lot, but I don't know.
It's still a game in the 90s.
And I am such a sucker for a well-told story. I mean, don't get me started on the depression that started after Mass Effect 3.
You're gonna dislike some of this then.
Oh no! Is there a Star Child and are there 3 different colors?
No.
Okay.
So Lo decides that he has to travel to Space-Time 6 because it's kind of the only way to get home now.
Okay.
To be fair, that's been his driving obsession to get home. Everyone's obsessed.
Everyone's obsessed. But that's usually a sign of genius, is obsession.
He wants to go to Space-Time 6, hopefully to find a way for the rest of the aliens to get home so that they can build a ship so that they can get home.
Right. That makes sense.
He needs some life crystals to power the device, and Brink has scoured the whole area and gathered all the life crystals.
Because that's his only obsession right now.
So they can't find any. Brink has discovered an alien device that makes life crystals.
Oh, this is not going to end well, in my opinion.
The problem is it's missing a part, which Robbins and Lo have because the creator told them about it and where to get it and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they go and talk to Brink so that he will give them some of the crystals that he's been able to produce with this machine. And they bargain with him, quote unquote bargain. Basically like, we'll give you our part to make the machine work and then we'll split it 50-50.
Right. That's fair.
And puts the piece in the machine. It produces 2 crystals. Lo takes both of them, saying, you have hundreds of crystals, we just need these 2.
Right.
Brink attacks him. He's irrational, distrustful, says he's lying continually to him.
Oh, interesting.
Like an addict. You're lying to me, you're keeping this from me, blah, blah. So he attacks Lo. And during the fight, Brink, pushes Robbins down, pushes Lo down, is lifting this big rock to drop onto Lo. And something weird happens. The scene is weird. It's kind of a weird animation. He's lifting this thing, and then he kind of goes, ugh, and then he falls over Lo down a cliff face. Dead again.
So, was he only supposed to be alive for a little bit?
I don't quite know. It's kind of weird.
Okay, great. Now we have a mystery that, let me guess, the story will never solve.
I don't think it solves it. I don't remember it coming up. It could also just be something that was just cut from animation, like maybe he was kicked. I don't know.
Right. Okay.
So he's dead once more. Robbins and Lo then proceed to the chamber below the eye, put the damn device in, put the power crystal in the life crystal in to help power it because they needed, and they had the part and they needed an extra power crystal basically, so they have a life crystal. And Robbins says she will activate the machine because she kind of knows how.
Right.
But says if anything happens, Lo can't use the sole remaining crystal on her.
That's a fair trade, I would say.
In fact, the only way to get a bad ending in this game
is
to use the crystal on her.
Is to basically, dismiss her wishes.
Yes. Lo says the same thing, like if something happens to me, don't use it on me.
That's totally fair.
Surprise, surprise. As Robbins is activating the machine, part of the machine gets stuck. She goes to pull it open. It goes boo, and she gets flung backwards and dies.
So Lo basically is a hallelujah.
Yes.
At this point, he has to fix that part.
No, he fixes the part. Like, the part is fixed. The thing is active. She dies after it's active.
Oh, that's just so disappointing.
And just literally says, leave and go. She's basically, like, her dying words are like, leave and go home.
Right.
And so he goes all the way up to the eye, or to this gateway, goes through into Space-Time 6.
Space-Time 6 sounds like a club.
And
it doesn't sound like
we're
a
already
realm
done
of
with the game.
existence.
This is all the ending cutscene now. He goes into Space-Time 6.
Which, again, I think of either as a club or a diner or something like that.
It's weird. It's not the best animation. It's
Is it like at the end of, what's that Kubrick film?
2001?
Yeah, 2001 A Space Odyssey.
There's no floating babies. There's floating universe, like little bubbles. and universe. Like
Okay.
that's about it. And then the Coquitans slowly like appear in front of him in order, and they're just standing there.
They're just
They're
hanging
floating
out.
in space like he is.
Okay.
And so he goes, and all these things are flying in front of him. The Coquitans are like, "Thank you, you've saved us. We now know way back," because he resists going further. He kind of he's like, "Oh, this is amazing. I can explore." No, I have to stay close to the portal.
Right. Exactly.
And they kind of realize it. They come to him. They all leave. In fact, they just cut scenes of them going boop, like in the middle.
Just like flickering out.
Well, no, they
Or
cut
just
to
winking out. I should
They
say.
cut to scenes you've been like you'll see the library and just like
Oh,
alien
they
appears.
suddenly just appear. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Wow. Okay.
And then you and the Coquitlam leader leave. You're back where you entered the portal, and he's like, thank you for saving us, blah blah. He goes, I wish I could have saved my friends. He goes, I can do that, and because time in Space Time 6 is infinite, it goes in all directions. So he just goes and picks up Robbins and Brink and brings them back to you. Robbins is alive, and Lo and Robbins hug, which it's just like,
Whoa.
okay. And Brink is now just an old man, but he's no longer obsessed with the crystals. He's hunched and everything. It's
Whoa.
really... And literally, there's just... No one addresses that Brink is an old man.
It's just accepted by the fact that he aged because his hubris was gone for a
I
fleet.
don't know. Like, literally, like, Brink! Maggie, Brink! And I love how people call Maggie, and Brink. It's like...
I hate that. That happens all the time, by the way. If you're going to call people by their last name, regardless of... their background or their gender, just do it. Just do it, guys.
So, and like, Maggie's like, yeah, we're safe, and like hugs Brink, hugs Lo, and then Brink is like, and I'm no longer obsessed, and like, that's all that he says
We're not
about
going
it.
to acknowledge the fact that you're an old man now.
The fact that he's an old, like, yeah, it's weird. It's discussed in the book, but the book has wildly different. It's totally different from the game in some respects. That
God.
I'm not going to even reference half of it. I kind of used the book just for the first part, the stuff on Earth, because that's not really covered in the game. The Coquitlam leader says, we are already building you a ship. Mm-hmm. It's already being constructed, and then the next...
Oh, because time's infinite, so they could already have been working
Well, it's
on
not
it
infinite
before.
for them anymore. They're back in Space-Time 4.
Oh, okay.
They're just that good, apparently.
I guess. Well, if you've had an eternity to perfect building a ship, maybe you could pull one out of your behind that quickly.
And then the last shot is just Brink walks in, Maggie Rock walks in. I'm doing it too. And Lo and like everyone's profusely thanking Lo for being basically the savior. And
Space Jesus Lo, saving us from our own mistakes.
And it's like, no, you've made a friend here. We are eternally in your debt, blah blah blah. And there's a line when they're talking about humans and like back home beating the aliens. There's a line about like, well, not all humans are as nice as us, and the alien just like such as it is with all young species. So it's they kind of play that a little bit here. But the broad strokes are, it's just like, you have saved us, Boston Low, and now you can go home. And that's the last shot, is the ship leaving. You don't even go back home. You don't even get a shot of them back at Earth. Unless that was in the credits. I don't know if it was. But...
Oh, okay. So it sounds like magical space wooge saves the day.
But yeah, that's it. And that's it. Game over. They go home. I wish they spent more time on the ending. It's really kind of just like rushed through.
It feels like it's very rushed through.
And there are some philosophical beats here that are good, but they're not delved deeply enough on, I feel.
Right.
You have,
Once again, it's a game. So
right. You have the nature of life and death. You have the nature of spirit and obsession and drive. And
the idea of a soul versus just being a shell or a husk.
Right. And, there's some stuff here you could chew on if they took the time to actually chew on it more.
Right.
It is a product of its time. If it was done today, it would have a much deeper game, perhaps more time taken on its story, less padding. It probably wouldn't even be a point-and-click game.
No, this...
It might be like a Myst-type game, actually.
It would be more of a Myst-type game, and it might be more of an indie thing, because now because of the accessibility of video games and computers,
I'm sure
you can
this game
easily
is
have an
just
indie hit.
tied up in tons of legal stuff, though.
Well, because
just because of the names
Spielberg
involved.
and Lucas and the other names that you mentioned that I forgot, but also are big players and probably have big connections still.
I hope it gets a remake at some point, like the Monkey Island games did. They got a full remake that might fix some of its issues. But yeah, I would like to call out, aside from the game itself and the Wikipedia and IMDb entries for everybody. As I said, I used the novel by Ellen Dean Foster.
Woohoo! Thank you for writing, good sir. It's not an easy task.
Which was used for some details, particularly, as I said, the early story before launch, because the game starts with the launch, like Borneo shuttle launch.
Right.
And then some dialogue about the asteroid. There's also a cut to a press conference that doesn't really happen in the book. The book more has like a gala type thing going on where the astronauts are like meeting press and stuff, but it's not like a conference type thing.
That seems less realistic to me, a gala versus a press conference.
Also, like, in the game, Maggie is always part of the team. In the book, Lo doesn't know she's part of the team until that gala.
Really?
Yeah.
Sounds very unnecessary.
Like, she went through training and knows how to handle a suit and stuff. She goes, yeah, those tests and the suit's weird. And he's like, you're going to do the reporting from a suit here on Earth? And she's like, no. And, like, that's his thought process. And she goes, oh, did anyone tell you I'm going on this mission?
Are we trying to write in sexism
NASA
to the
crews
character?
train together.
Well, that's the thing. They have to train together because you have to synchronize how... There's so much teamwork involved in living in a place that doesn't want you to live there as aggressively as space. Space is aggressively not habitable to humans. So you have to be a team player.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you're unable to be a team player, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you will not get into space.
And
End of story.
There's some weird, non-useful... Like, in the game, there's weird characterization, too. So, Cora Miles is the NASA payload technician. Mm-hmm. She is there for the first scene, like, before the spaceship takes you away.
Just disappears, yeah.
There's, like, she's running for Congress. Okay. Like, alright.
Why is that even mentioned? Why is that even pertinent?
It's mentioned there to give the character one interesting turn, and that's it.
Okay, thanks, Cora. Good luck with your campaign.
One interesting tidbit, and that's it.
I'm going to go essentially find the Fountain of Youth now.
And Ken Borden, the shuttle pilot, has even less. Just, he is the best pilot we have.
Thanks, Ken. Wow. That's...
The book also does this weird thing where like the aliens are watching the Earthlings. Like that's what the ghosts are and stuff.
Oh.
So it tells the story from their perspective too, which kind of ruins a lot of the mystique.
No. Okay, writing a book is hard work, and I'm not here to tell an author that they should never have done that.
Right.
But that is definitely not how I prefer to either read or write a story myself, as somebody who writes and loves a good story. So
another source I used, Santiago Mendez is a longtime friend of the game and has written on the Dig's development at the Dig Museum, which is available on the Internet Wayback Machine. I'm going to give you how to do this here. You go to the Internet Wayback Machine, you type in the address dig.mixnmojo, MIXNMOJO.com, and set the year back to around 2008 to 2010, because it no longer exists. Like, the website still exists, but it's not the same. So you can't find the information.
Right.
There's a bunch of images there and even files including the original demo.
Wow.
So, and you can still download them through the Wayback Machine.
The Wayback Machine is,
hit or miss sometimes.
It's hit or miss. Sometimes it's the best thing ever, and sometimes you're just like, why did we let this still exist? So. And
the YouTuber Cannot Be Tamed also goes into great detail and development woes with her excellent video titled The Amazing Story of the Dig.
What's the YouTube name again?
Cannot Be Tamed.
Cannot Be Tamed. Okay. And the title of the video again was?
The Amazing Story of the Dig.
Okay. Awesome.
There's not a lot on the Dig out there.
Well, no, it doesn't. It sounds like it was something that was kind of revolutionary for its era, but then there's a lot of games like this where you realize it's a stepping stone. Like this was a step in the right direction towards more of a serious narrative.
Yes.
This was definitely not a game meant for kids. Kind of. Myst was definitely not made for kids, but you could see a kid playing it and still having fun.
Right.
This feels like a game that was not meant for children.
Aggressively not meant for children. Like that scene where you cut off Brink's arm.
Aggressively not meant for children.
Aggressively not for children. And it was even worse, because in the game, his arm is just stuck, and they mention gangrene and all this other stuff. Okay? Yeah. In the original pitch for that idea, water was rising.
Oh, gosh. So drowning on top of chopping off arms and... Ooh.
So, yeah, there's just a lot of... Again, part of the fun of this game in covering it is the tortured development of it. This game is literally called Cursed, especially by Santiago Mendez, because of the names involved and how long it took to develop. In the credits, there is... I forget what the exact term is, but it's like... Those Lost in the Dig's Past or something like that. It's just all the people who worked on the old versions and didn't work on the final one.
Oh man, well I'm glad they did that at least, because you want to acknowledge all that hard work,
Right.
and you don't want it to feel like it went to nothing.
So yeah, like this is a great game. The art is wonderful for the time.
Yeah, you can disregard my critique of the story, because if you're somebody who just likes to have unique puzzles, I don't think there's anything wrong with that being your kind of game. I just don't play those kinds of games myself.
Right. And you'll be playing it next time when we do a stream.
Okay.
I'll have a walkthrough. I can help you anytime you want.
Oh my gosh, if you want it, I'm gonna be so pathetic. I'm not even gonna lie. It's not my thing. I'm gonna need a lot of help.
And if you want to watch that stream or any of our streams, you can
Yeah.
become a patron.
Patron!
That's patreon.com/loretogether. We have 3 tiers set up.
Yes.
The $1 tier gets you early access to episodes. We're also probably going to do outtakes at that tier soon.
Yes, because we
Or
realized...
Q&A episodes at that tier. One of the two.
Yeah.
$3 is going to be access to the streams.
Yes.
And possibly voting for new episodes.
Right. We're still deciding on voting, because we did voting at the $5 tier, I think.
Yeah.
Is that the... And I think...
But I've exhausted all the stuff that I had to plan to get through.
So we need more people who want to vote.
We can do it on Twitter until
We may do it on Twitter, which you should follow us at Lore Together on Twitter, where we not only update you on what we're doing, but in what we've been recording, but also occasionally I'll retweet stuff, which there's a lot of ridiculous Animal Crossing stuff happening right now, which is adorable.
Gaming is a fertile environment for discussion.
Absolutely.
On Reddit, you can find me. I usually post on Reddit. Saf usually handles the Twitter. But you can find me on Reddit under the username LoreTogetherPod.
And if you want to email us directly, because you're not really into the social medias, loretogether@gmail.com. Mystic recently has been really taking that over, because I just have not had a chance to check it. Unfortunately, I'm an essential worker in the middle of the pandemic, so that's exhausting.
So this has been The Dig. What did you think?
What did I think? I think the game has a lot of really good story elements. That's a story I would like to retell. It's an interesting first contact kind of story. I don't think I would play the game on my own without us having this podcast, but I do think it's one of those things where there's certain games where I know I wouldn't be good at playing it, so I've watched a playthrough. Like The Last of Us, the first one, I watched a playthrough because I wasn't going to be good at that game. So.
The funny thing is, even during the playthrough, so I refreshed my memory by watching a long play, so there's no one talking over it. But you will hear Lo going, "It won't do anything. It won't do anything. It won't do anything," all the time. Because you're just constantly clicking items and trying to figure out what does what.
Oh, that's a sound of frustration. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's been The Dig. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, guys. We love and appreciate our listeners, all of them.
Pay attention to the Twitter or the Patreon, where we'll figure out what's going to be the next episode. We have 2 options. We'll discuss those when this episode goes up.
Yeah, we will. In the meantime, stay safe out there in the pandemic landscape we live in.
Thank you, guys.
Bye!